Welcome to Module 2.5 on tendering. We would like to acknowledge our funders at CMHC through the Housing Supply Challenge who funded the project to make this work possible. We would also like to acknowledge that this course is being offered in partnership with the Faculty of Community Services at Toronto Metropolitan University, as well as Wausau Distant Education Centre. By the end of Module 2.5, you will be able to answer the following questions. What is tendering? What are different approaches to tendering? How should a project manager think about preparing, distributing, and evaluating tender documents and packages? And why is tendering important? What is tendering? Tendering describes the process to secure or procure the contractors and materials required to complete construction work. Tendering begins when tender documents, also referred to as the solicitation or tender package, are prepared by the project manager and shared with potential contractors. Potential contractors are then invited to submit bids to complete the work. Developing clear and transparent tender documents is critical to a successful and competitive tender process. During the tendering process, the project manager should be ready to answer questions from potential contractors about the scope of work, design specifications, payment processes, insurance required, quality standards, and other contract details. The clearer the tender documents, the simpler the tender process will be for the project manager. Once tendering is complete and bids are received, procurement describes the process of evaluating those bids and awarding the contract to successful suppliers. The focus of this module is on tendering during the planning and pre-construction phase, after cost estimation, design work, and scheduling are all completed. However, it is worth noting that tendering and procurement can occur at any time throughout the project. For example, tendering processes may be used to procure designs in the planning and pre-construction phase and to procure materials in the construction phase. Now we will look at a few different approaches to tendering. There are three common approaches to tendering: invited tenders, public or open tenders, and direct selection. The next few slides will give an overview of each approach to tendering. The approach chosen for your project will depend on a variety of factors. Some funding agreements or organizational policies may require a particular type of tender process, particularly if the value of the contract is above a certain dollar amount, and this should be verified in advance of choosing a tendering approach for the project. When you are tendering, it is important to pick either a competitive or non-competitive strategy. Competitive can be either open or invited. In the open process, you can post a request for proposals or a request for tenders. In the invited process, you have the option to add in a request for pre-qualification documents. For example, you can request a list of previous projects with similar scopes, or if you are looking for a First Nation-owned business specifically. These can be outlined in the pre-qualification requests. We will go over these in more detail in the next few slides. For invited tenders, this is when a housing or project manager invites bids from a short list of preferred contractors. This could be contractors that the housing manager or project manager has worked with in the past and has had a good standing relationship. This is the best for smaller projects with a focused scope of work. When using the invited tenders method, it is recommended that at least 3 contractors are identified and invited to submit bids to maintain competition and ensure accuracy in the bids. Depending on organizational policy or terms of funding agreements, this may not be an option for larger projects. For public or open tenders, This is where the project manager invites bids from any contractor interested in completing the project. A key consideration with public or open tenders is determining how and where to advertise the request for bids to ensure that sufficient bids are received. This may be hosted on the First Nations website or through a portal that is public, for example, the Government of Canada's Buy and Sell, or a private company such as MERX. MERX is a good service which can provide good exposure for your tendering requests. Tender opportunities could also be advertised using social media or press releases where interested bidders could be redirected to the website or the portal where the tender documents are hosted, or to contact the project manager directly for more information, to express their interest, or to receive a copy of the tender package. For direct selection, this is when a project manager decides to work with a specific contractor or supplier based on a good reputation or good history of work, instead of issuing an invited or open tender process. This approach can be risky because there is no competitive element, so there is no clear way for the project manager to ensure that the bid is fair and reasonable, such as the proposed cost, proposed timeline, or proposed quality of work, and usually ends up with a higher cost due to a lack of competition. This approach requires a high level of trust between the project manager, designers, and contractors, and allows the contractor to be more integrated into the project and its decision-making, which may have positive outcomes. Depending on organizational policy or terms of funding agreements, this may not be an option for larger projects. However, it is important to note that when working in the North, there are a few reasons why direct selection would work well. Sometimes there is a lack of people who are able or willing to work. For specialized work, you may be looking at completing work that only one firm or one individual in the area can complete, or there is already a crew in the community who are completing current projects and would like to bid on this work. Preparing tender documents. Tender documents often follow a standardized format and in most cases should include elements such as Class A or Level 1 estimates, drawings and specifications, and a bill of quantities, which breaks down a full list of materials needed for the project, their specifications, and required quantities. Types of tender or bid documents varies, but some common types include request for qualifications, requests for proposals, requests for information, and request for bids. The structure of the tendering and procurement documents and process will depend on the specific project and the degree to which the project manager has chosen to contract the full project, such as through a lump sum contract, coordinate subcontracting, or hire day labor. Here we have a sample tendering and procurement relationship. At the top, you have your general contractor who is responsible for equipment, material supplies, construction services, and utilities. But there also may be subcontractors who are contracted for specific trades, such as plumbing, electricians, and drywallers. Sometimes the subcontractor will further contract out the work, for example, if there are day laborers from the community or local suppliers in the area. So why is tendering important? Benefits of a clear and transparent tendering and procurement process include assuring quality by making sure contracts are signed with qualified contractors and suppliers. Ensuring competitive costing or bidding by establishing competition between bidders to secure the most cost-effective option. And mitigating risk by reducing the chance of significant project delays. Here are some references and resources for further learning or understanding.